Within this video, we will explain you about the naming convention that you can use for your integrations for the incoming configuration, the outgoing configuration, the route, and the entity transformers. It is very important within any IT system that you have the naming conventions in a certain way that it's easy to recognize for also other people working in the same environment to see what is going on with that specific configuration. So in the case for a incoming configuration, that would be, for example, saying the platform and then get and then the object. In this case, we actually mostly put a dash in between here. But as long as you're consistent with anything that you place in between or after or before, it doesn't really matter as long as it's consistent and everyone else within the system is also using it the same way. Let's say that within your Alumio environment, you have multiple clients in there and you do specific things for multiple clients or maybe for different websites of like a same platform. You can always say like, okay, we have the client name and then the platform and then the get and then the object. So in this case, for the incoming configuration, that would mean, for example, a shopware and then the object would customers. So to be able to save this, I have to at least put something in here and I am allowed to save that. Then for the outgoing configuration, we recommend the same thing, but then it would be either a push or a create or a update or maybe even a delete, or maybe you would have to do something more specific. Let's say you close an order or you open an order. You can use any of those kind of verbs. So in this case, we would say, let's say a SAP, and then we have a create customers that way to keep consistent in the namespacing of the capital letters as well. Let's put that over there, and then we have to fill in something in here, and we would have to save that. So now we have two that we can use over here. So we see that the shopware get customers, and then we have the SAP, and then we have create customers. So in this case, we would have those two named. Then for the routing, it's very useful to name as well. We actually start with objects, and then from A to B. So in this case, object would be customers, and then the platform A would be shopware, and then platform B would be SAP. Again, would you say that this is for a specific client or anything like that? We probably recommend to put that here at the front as well, and then you recommend, or you can see it that way. So in this case, we have this customers from shopware to SAP, and we can save that way, and therefore you have a naming convention that you can use. Let's say you would have to create your entity transformers. It's very useful to make your entity transformers as understandable within the name as possible. So if you would say a transformer of mapping data from point A to point B, that is understandable. If you would just say like test Magento 2 data, you don't know what it's doing, you don't really know what it's going to do, you don't know where it's going to be, you don't really know where it's going to be used. So therefore, we really recommend to say, okay, what are you going to do with that data? And then give like a clear name, a short name of saying what you would do with that data. For example, we could say that on this route, we have data going from shopware to SAP. We could say, for example, map customers from shopware to SAP. And then we can place at least something in here. We are allowed to save it. And then we can also write it down here. And it's very understandable that if this transformer would be addressed here, that we have those mapping of those customers from those two systems that we have right here that way. So that is just something that we recommend for a naming convention. Of course, you could do something slightly different, but as long as everyone is doing the same thing within your organization and within your Alumio environment, there is always a good way for that. And it's not that there's a right or wrong. It is more something that as long as it's consistent and as long as people understand it, that's the most important part.